This is a soul path reading for the monk. So it's been a while, and it was funny because I actually had to look up your code name, what your code name was from before, and as soon as I went into your email, I was picking up on this lifetime of you being a monk. And then I went into the email and I saw the code name that you had from the last time of the monk. So I don't know if something like that is going to come up in this reading, something referring to some of those lifetimes. But I'm going to go ahead and surround us in some positive, protective space for the reading. I have, how many crystals do I have here? Six crystals. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and surround us with my lapis lazuli here. Okay, so I have a guide coming up, and I think it's female. I think she's female, and she's covering you in gray. I really want to look this up because I feel like there is something significant with that I'm not familiar with. Okay. Okay, no, all right. Spiritual, try spiritual meaning of color, gray. This is not coming up. Okay. Okay, here we go. Looking everywhere for the positive meaning of the color gray. Everybody wants to go on about a bunch of negative meanings. Kind of similar to black. People want to go on about negative meanings with black too, and there's a lot of positives with it. Okay, so it is a color that is dignified, conservative, and carries authority. It is controlled, inconspicuous, and considered a color of compromise because it sits between the extremes of black and white. It's perceived as long-lasting and carries intellect, knowledge, and wisdom. So this one thing especially is really sticking out. This, when it's saying it's dignified and it carries authority. And I feel even like that has something to do with this crystal here, lapis lazuli. This is a throat chakra stone. And what's really interesting is I was just reading someone. because like I told you, I emailed you and I was telling you, hey, your guides don't want to talk yet. Is it maybe because of your questions? And then it really wasn't because of your questions. And I was thinking maybe it was, since you hadn't really asked any. But then it didn't end up being because of your questions, because they still wouldn't talk even after that. They weren't communicating until now. But what's interesting is yesterday I actually did a reading, and the code name was the throat chakra. And in the reading, it was coming up with this person's throat chakra, this block there, with communicating. And then they emailed back and they were talking about how they are a male, but their voice is very kind of high pitched. They sound female, even though they're male. And I never would have remembered that about your reading. When you sent me that email, and you were saying that exact same thing, because throat chakra issues came up during your reading. And then when you emailed back, it was in this same type of way that you were saying that you had to, you had to have something done with your throat, the vocal cords or something, because of how, I guess, high-pitched your voice was sounding. That is so strange that I literally just read someone that had that exact same thing, and I never would have thought of that, because I did your reading such a long time ago that I never would even have remembered that detail. And I didn't, even after that. Like, I was literally reminded of it as I was coming into your reading. When I actually picked up the throat chakra stone, all of a sudden that dawned on me. I remembered that from a really long time ago. So your guides clearly reminded me of that, but that's so weird. They wouldn't speak until after I had just done that reading. And that reading, literally, it was someone with the same type of block, the same type of thing, with communication and their voice being a lot higher pitched, and then being male. So that was pretty interesting. Something else, though, about the color gray, and this isn't something that you're probably going to read anywhere. This is something that a long time ago somebody told me. They were really into tarot, and they were saying that gray was a color associated with the high priestess in tarot. And so she was saying it was a very psychic color, and it was also a very protective color. And since it sits right in between black and white, and both of those are actually really protective colors as well, so it kind of gives that full spectrum when it comes to psychic protection. And then there's also a sense of emotional healing that I'm kind of picking up with that color that your guide is putting over you. So there's also something to do with emotional healing there. There's psychic protection there, but then also specifically the healing also has to do with this throat chakra imbalance, because of this idea of gray carrying authority. So there's some block with if you can't communicate in a certain way, then you can, it's like you can feel less authoritative. If people don't perceive you in that way, then it's harder to perceive yourself in that way when it comes to your own life. And to direct yourself with certain things. So part of these patterns and things that you're saying that you keep continuing to fall into, to fall back into, a lot of it has to do with how you're going to be perceived by others. Okay, yeah, and they're reminding me, see, that's the other thing that was really similar about this other reading that I just gave, is that this person had the same type of thing where he would almost try to overcompensate and try and add more masculine energy, be perceived in a more masculine way because he's perceived in a more feminine way. And so there's like this overcompensation. It's like we try to make up for this perceived lack of male energy. And this, which isn't there. This is just you're being your natural self. And if you were born with whatever it was happening with your throat, if you're born with that, then you're born with that. And your energies are the way that they are. We can balance them out. Sometimes people are overly balanced with more masculine energy or more feminine energy. Sometimes it's supposed to be there. Sometimes it is actually an imbalance and they need to work on contributing more or like nurturing more of a certain side of themselves, whether it's their masculine side or their feminine side. But some of these habits, it has to do with being perceived in a certain way. And it would be difficult to meditate and kind of step back into that stance and be perceived by others in that way, or kind of in some ways just not perceived by them in this other way. If you're kind of stepping back more away from others, that's still you being perceived in a different way. Even if they're just perceiving you in general less, still there is a drastic difference there. There is a drastic change there. And a lot of times people don't like changes. And with other people, they see them in a different way. If the person changes something about their habits or whatever it is. So what your guides are saying is that you kind of have a tendency, whether you realize it or not, you kind of have a tendency to take others' perceptions of you to heart. And that's just because of your past and things that you went through as a kid and as a teenager. And it kind of built up this sort of stigma. And it built up almost this persona in a way that you were sort of attempting to break free from. And then you were saying that you had like a surgery or something like that, and it ended up more corrected, where I guess your voice sounds deeper, I guess is what it is. But that didn't go away. That doesn't mean that it just heals all of the emotional damage. It doesn't mean that the self-esteem issue just is suddenly released as well. It doesn't mean that the disimbalance isn't there. And your guides are saying, it's just so weird that I just read that other person. And your guides are saying that that is really even a confirmation that it's really going back to that. That is still what this is. So they're saying that this is a big block, and that there are things that go back to that in particular that you're not even aware of, and like things that you might not even think go back to that, but they do. So a lot of the habits that you get stuck in, it's your way of like putting out a certain vibration. Even if it's a toxic one that you know is bad for you, sometimes that can be a programmed masculine thing. So it's like you can have masculine programming, so like false masculine, that actually in some way it damages others, or in some way it damages yourself. Obviously you can have this with feminine programmings as well. So you can have these with both. If it's false, it's false. And so out of those programmings, you can do perpetual habits. You can do things that harm others or that harm yourself, or both. But it's out of this energy is there to compensate, to be more male, and that's really where this came from, where this started. So it's like you need to start perceiving yourself as the authority figure for yourself. It doesn't matter how other people have perceived you before, what they've thought of you, or even the vibration that they have felt from you or that you've given off through your voice or whatever else it was. So what matters is how you perceive yourself. And if you're the authority figure for your own life, you don't give a shit what other people think. And what you're going to do isn't based off of any of their opinions or any of their rules or any of their thought processes. What they might think or what they might feel or what they do think or feel towards you or about you. And your guides are saying that that's really none of your business anyway, because it really has nothing to do with you. It's in their head. And whatever is in their head, it has to do with them. Even if they're not thinking it about themselves, it has completely all only to do with their self. It doesn't have to do with any other person that they may be thinking or feeling something about. The only reason that that thought is there or that feeling there is something to do with themselves and never anything to do with the other person. If they're perceiving themselves in a positive way, they can perceive someone else in a positive way. If they're perceiving themselves in a negative way, they can perceive someone else in a negative way. And this is also true with they can perceive something like in a truly negative way where it's negative and they can simply observe that that is negative without judging it. That's like Wolf made a video on recently. Or it's the same with positivity. If they're perceiving themselves positively, they can see something else positively, but also they can see something as falsely positive. Okay, so sometimes we get positive feedback from others who are falsely programmed to see certain negative behaviors as positive. So sometimes we can get positive feedback from others when we are doing something that is actually harmful to ourselves or even harmful to them. And they assume that it is positive, or they associate it with something good, like a good feeling. So like a false high. So your guides are saying that sometimes we get positive feedback for doing something really negative. And then we learn to do that thing in order to get positive feedback from others. I feel like there are some people who really don't need to be in your life at all. And there have been some people who have just engaged in negative behaviors, and they've brought those behaviors out of you, or they've encouraged those behaviors from you. So your guides are saying that you have to be yourself. And that is really a huge thing with the throat chakra, because the throat chakra is all about expressing and expressing yourself. Well, if you don't know yourself, if you're not being yourself, or if you don't really know who that is, or if you don't allow that, then you can't express yourself. And so obviously that chakra has to do with both of those things. A lot of people, they only talk about the expressing end of the throat chakra, that the throat chakra is all about expressing who you are and your individuality. And the throat chakra also has to do with willpower. So it has to do with your authority as well. Your will, your determination to get things done or see things through. Or be yourself, because that's really what this chakra enables. That's what it's all about. So whenever somebody has a throat chakra issue, they are not comfortable being themselves. And in some way, somewhere, probably in multiple ways, they're not really being who they are. So they're not comfortable being who they are, but in some ways they haven't been who they are. But it's almost like a habit to not be yourself that society really encourages. It's like the more you're not yourself, a lot of times, at least certain people in society will jump up and down. This is like such a positive thing. But again, it's falsely positive. If you're the monk and you're off meditating, in some cultures, sure, that might be seen as really positive. In ours, not so much. If you're, going off meditating all the time, or you're on like a spiritual journey to go within and figure out your own self, and you're going on an inward journey to find that, that isn't always normally seen in the most positive way. Not to people who are closed, not to people who are closed off to their own inward journey, which is often encouraged in our society. So most people, a lot of people are. Maybe not most people, but a lot of people are. And your guides are saying that most people at a certain age are. So certain age groups are more than others. So your guides are saying that when you're young, you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to sort of find your self-identity, but with a group. And it's almost like your self-identity can almost get lost in the group identity, and it can become like a variation of the group's identity. So you're still different, in your unique way, but it's like you're being the group in your unique way. And the group really encourages that. So to pull out of that, you just have to do things that the group wouldn't do. And this obviously is kind of referring to past. But when you're a teenager, that's what most teenagers are doing. And the ones who aren't really standouts, and this can cause problems with self-esteem, but it can also just cause you to go along with habits that the group forms. And you more see them, you observe them, and then you decide whether or not to continue it yourself, whether or not to implement it yourself. And your guides are saying that that's your choice, but they're also saying that people often do it. When they're really young, that's what they tend to do. Oh, the group is doing that, I'm going to do that. And then I fit in with the group, and I'm okay. And I'm okay because they look at me and they see that I match them. So I'm not a threat to them. And it's like we can get along when I'm not a threat to them. So that's the thing. Anytime that a person ever put you down and came towards you with an energy to make you feel weaker or make you feel less, it was out of their own vibration of feeling that way. Because they actually feel threatened by something that is different. And if someone comes with a vulnerable energy in some way, or that can be perceived that way, and it's good to be vulnerable, it's good to be open, it's good to be trusting. So those are good things. You can also obviously be too vulnerable. You can be open to the wrong things. Or you can be too trusting, you can be naive, or just plain stupid. Which isn't really a positive thing. You can trust the wrong person, even when they're obviously not the right person to trust. So it's like when you're bombarded by all of these energies, you're going to do something out of it. And your guides are saying that that is to be expected. So you can't really be hard on yourself for the habits that you had, the habits that you got into, or that you were expected to be into. When you were trying to compensate for this perceived failure or this perceived weakness. And again, the only reason that they were perceiving it in that way is because they felt that themselves. They didn't want to look at that, and so that threatens them. That it makes them feel vulnerable, but in a false way. And it's like then they have to look at themselves too much. They have to look at something that they perceive as negative, that they don't want to be there. And so instead, they just perceive it as the other person. The other person is bringing that up for them and making them feel that way in themselves. And so they just look at it as totally, this is about the other person. This isn't my issue. This isn't about me. I don't need to meditate and explore and figure out, why do I feel this? Why do I feel this threat? Why do I feel this fear? Why do I feel vulnerable? Why do I feel so uncomfortable? They don't want to figure that out or look at that. So instead, they're just going to make fun of the other person. They're going to put the other person down, try to make the other person feel that instead, in other words. And obviously, that other person already does to begin with, but they're going to make them feel it more, so that they can sort of shift this in their mind, or really keep it a certain way in their mind, where it's about this and it's not about me, and I don't need to look in a mirror at all, and make it about myself, which it really is. So people don't like looking at themselves. They don't like traveling within. They want to keep everything on the outside and make it about what is around them, who is around them. And if somebody else brings up a feeling for them, within them, it really is for them to discover something about themselves, whether it's positive or it's perceived as negative. Or it really is negative, even, like something that they really do need to remove. But even that you can look at in a positive way, because it's for growth. So you need to be the authority figure in your life. You need to decide what you want. If you don't want these habits and these old things that you're clinging to, these thought forms that are attacking you, your guides are saying to stop making it about you and stop associating it with yourself. So, in other words, stop identifying with it. This really came out of needing to please others, out of needing to be perceived in a certain way. And so you started doing toxic things to be perceived in a certain way. And then the behaviors, the thought forms grew, and they adapted. So now it's like they keep learning how to convince you to stay in their energies. So even if some of those voices from your past, either they aren't there at all, some of them, or some of them are there less, encouraging you to be a certain way or do certain things, you still have these thought forms, and you still have the energies of those thought forms. And you have to be careful that you don't identify with them. And then you're going to start feeling it outside of yourself. And you're not going to really want to do any of those behaviors anymore. But your guides are saying that you need to work on your throat chakra. You really, really have got to work on your throat chakra. And this really means setting boundaries with yourself, setting boundaries with other people. Even I get a feeling of like moving even to a new location. When or if you're able to do that, and obviously if you resonate with that or feel to do that, or even like changing certain things, but some of it has to do with where you physically go and not going to certain places, or encouraging certain energies to be around you. So some of it has to do with physical environment, physical settings, where you would attract energy to yourself in certain ways, or attention to yourself in certain ways from others. And I feel like you need to be in your own still space. So it feels like this kind of calling, in a sense, to sit and meditate that you're talking about, it comes from your own authority for your own life. So kind of the way that you would want to govern yourself. And it's what you would already be doing if those other voices had never been there, and if they weren't there. If those voices weren't there, whether it's thought forms, which it is, whether it is a lot of different people, definitely some of it is or has been. When you can just sort of zone in on your own voice, and not hear all of these others, when things can get quiet for you, I feel like you know that that is what you would want. You would want to be in that space, in your energy. So what they're saying is that comes from your own authority for your own life. No one else decided that for you. No one else gave you that thought or that feeling to do that thing. That was something that came to you on your own. It also has to do with your path later on. Because I keep getting the word premonition. It has something to do with something in the future that's going to occur where you need to be more in your still, quiet space. You need to recover and heal from certain traumatizing things. And it doesn't only feel like the throat chakra. There are other chakras as well. There's the sacral, the root, but I feel like to a less degree. I also feel the shoulders as well. Shoulders has to do with parents and people that came before us. It can even have to do with siblings as well, family, or other authority figures, teachers, people like that, and people older than us. A lot of times, though, it has to do with our family line and what is passed down to us, or words that are said over us, thought forms that are passed down to us, or energies that are just sort of spoken over us from specifically those people, from specifically family members, especially ones who are older than us, or even in our direct line, like parents, grandparents, great grandparents, but it doesn't have to be. And it doesn't even have to be specifically family. Other energies can gather there as well, but they tend to be people who are older than us or authority figures. It tends to be those people. It would rarely be somebody who is like younger than us, like a younger child or something like that, unless they were posing as, like, in a sense, an adult figure or somebody kind of looming over us. Then an energy from them could also gather here. So it kind of depends on the person and the situation. I feel like the crown chakra, on the other hand, is actually doing okay. The crown chakra is spinning, it's pretty healthy. The only energy that's there, it just feels like a resistance to what it's saying. Your crown chakra is the chakra really of mediumship. It's the chakra that connects to your reality self, it connects to your guides, and other higher energies that are around. And it gives you access to sort of to your mission in life, past lives, all these different things. It gives you access to that kind of information. And so when information is coming down through to you, it's not that it's not able to come down through to you, because that really feels very much intact. It's a matter of, are you going to resist it, or are you going to fall in line with it when you know that it's good for you? Because you're in a habit of doing things that aren't always good for you. Some of this has to do with eating as well. Diet. Some of this has to do with your diet too. That could be blocking some of this. The third eye has a lot of energies clouding it. A lot of energies that really have to do with sort of perceptions of yourself, old ideas of who you are, and the way other people have perceived you, expectations that are put on you. And this all is kind of in there, kind of clouding your brain. So that's kind of a block as well. That feels more like energies and thought forms in there that just kind of need to be released out. It just feels like kind of old, stale, toxic kind of energy in there that just needs to sort of be poured out. But it feels like that almost needs to be kind of pushed out or knocked out in some way. Like, even if you did something, what is that called? Tuning forks, I think it's called tuning forks, that's what it's called. Or something with sound therapy, where you're kind of hearing a sound or a frequency that's going off next to your head, whether it's like crystal bowls or even like chanting or something like that, or tuning forks. So maybe you can even look that up in your area, see if there's somebody who does something like that, see if there's somebody who uses some kind of sound therapy. It would almost be like somebody who does Reiki, and you go to them for Reiki, but instead they're going to do something with like singing bowls or tuning forks or chanting or drumming. It could even be something like that. So a healer specifically who uses that to clear out chakras and things. Because that almost feels like, it needs to be like jarred out of there, is what it feels like. I also feel like you might want to do this multiple times. You might want to do this 2 or maybe 3 times before you're really going to feel jarred in the way that you need to. See, like, for instance, like when I do a clearing, right, I might use like a crystal, okay? And so I have my green fluorite here. So let's say I use a green fluorite, right? And I send energy to your head. So that would mean like you were to get an aura clearing reading, where I would focus on clearing it out. And I just don't feel like that would do much of anything if I were to just visualize that there's an energy being sent in there. Oh, that's why. Oh, okay, because your guides are saying that it has to do with voices. This has to do with voices. So people that you've heard, things that you've had sort of said over you. So it feels almost like it's some kind of new sound that needs to go in there. So it feels like you need somebody who works with sound to specifically kind of get that muck out of there. And then you just need to focus on being still, being in your power, being in your present energy, and your authoritative stance on your own life. And it's trajectory. So you need to decide for yourself where you're going, in other words. And realize that it's like these old habits and things, it's somebody else. Somebody else decided that for you and you went along with them. And so it's like these old people, these old voices are still choosing the trajectory for where your life is going to go. They're still choosing your life direction and your life path. So let's say, you have some old bully or somebody who made fun of your throat, okay? Choosing your life path. That's basically what this feels like. You have these old people, these old voices, whether it's parents, or teachers, or friends, or bullies, or whatever. Probably multiple people, because I don't feel only one specific energy. It feels like it comes from a lot of places. Which is why it would be so hard to not identify with. If you've heard it from, so many various groups, right? Then it would be really hard not to take that to heart. Which, that is the same sentence that they were using before. They said that a while ago. They said, take it to heart. And I feel this kind of, they're saying that on purpose. They're also referring to the heart chakra. So they mean 2 things with that. They mean the expression, take it to heart. Like you really dwell on it and you take it in and you really feel it. It impacts you and you keep it with you. You store it, okay? But then they're also saying that you are actually storing it in the chakra or around the chakra, around the chakra space. So you're storing it near this heart chakra or even in this heart chakra center. And then it travels down to the solar plexus. This has to do with your self-esteem. So encouraging words can really help the solar plexus to open, and really discouraging words or disheartening words can really cause it to close. Something like bullying can definitely cause it to close. Somebody making fun of you can for sure causes your self-esteem to go down. Your solar plexus all has to do with your self-esteem majorly. Confidence is really central to the solar plexus, and it's energy that's going into your energy field. So I feel like they're saying that this isn't your fault. And like they said, you can't be hard on yourself. But this feels like a past thing. Okay? Now you are older and you can understand what you have been doing things out of. So I feel like now if you were to continue it, your guides, what's the word for that? They're not gonna say these same types of things. It isn't your fault, you know, people put this on you from before. No, now if you were to keep doing it when you can understand it more, now it would be like, okay, we understand that this came to you from before, but now you are just continuing to choose it. So now that you can understand it better, and you can look at things in a more objective way, and you can choose not to be so affected by words from your past. You can look at them clearly, and you can look at those people more clearly and understand them, and that it was out of their own crap, and not yours, that they were feeling threatened by your energy because of, like what your guides are saying, they were really threatened by something within themselves. There was something there that they didn't want to observe. They didn't want to have to go into some thought, some feeling that was within them. So put it on you instead. So it's like now you can grasp these concepts more, so you can start to pull out of their energies, those people, their energies. And you can come into your own authority, your own energy, and what does your own energy say? And your energy doesn't say to be lost in certain habits or confused about who you are. It knows what it wants. It knows what to do. It's already coming to you. You know, with your crown chakra, it's already receiving the information and the divine calling, in a sense, you could say, because this has to do with your path later on. It's something that you're going to need. If you're not still now for later on, then it's like the later on won't be there. It's like it's going to drag out. The later on is going to be now you're just getting into becoming still, and so then there can be a later on. And eventually it feels like that's not even going to be there. It feels like for some reason this needs to be within like a certain time period, or you're just going to kind of lose it. Like lose the opportunity to really do what you're here to do. So it doesn't feel like you just have, you know, forever to get out of these habits. It really doesn't. There's some kind of time frame, it feels like, for some reason. And I feel like that's something that you need to think about as well. I feel like it has to do with age somehow. I feel like your body even needs to be functioning a certain way somehow. You need to have energy. You need to have stamina and vitality. I don't know why. And I don't feel like you necessarily know that now. Who knows? But because right now it feels like you're focusing on getting still. So I don't really know where that's going to lead or what that's going to end up meaning for you, and I don't feel like I'm even supposed to know that. Then you would know that. Or maybe you do already. Maybe you'll have an idea already. I'm not really sure. But you need to get still. You need to drop these habits, and it needs to be within a certain time period. And this heart chakra thing, I'm definitely feeling my heart chakra. There's like a pain in there, like a physical pain in there. So you even need to be careful of these energies that you're holding on to. I don't know. I feel like it could do something to your physical body. I'm not even exactly sure how that could be. Obviously, energies, when you hold on to them, they can do something to your physical body, but it might even be related to habits as well. Toxic habits, especially if you keep giving into them and they are adapting and you're moving further into those. I don't feel like that would be good. But then even again, the way that you eat as well, I feel like that's going to shift also, and that you're going to eat a lot cleaner consistently. And just take care of yourself. It's just really a matter of taking care of your emotional, physical, and mental self, and energetic self, obviously. But all of those things affect your energy body. If you're taking care of your mind and your emotions and you're clearing those things out, it's automatically going to affect your physical body and your energy body, but also your physical body is going to affect all these other bodies as well if you're more looking after it. But sound, it's got to be sound, and even affirmations. Since you've said negative things about yourself, even to your own self, thought things, felt things, and had things spoken, thought, felt over you and towards you that you have agreed with, or in other words, that you've aligned yourself with, that can really impact your energy. But specifically it was sounds, voices, physical voices, and even thoughts and emotions. These are sounds as well, because there is a part of you that is aware of the thoughts coming towards you. And I even get a feeling that you would be aware of thoughts coming towards you even consciously. Like you could feel someone is thinking or feeling something about me even if they didn't say it out loud. And so that's still almost like a physical sound coming towards you, even if they're saying nothing. So it's definitely a sound. It has a vibration, it has a tone, it has a frequency. And I think that's part of the reason that the idea of tones is coming in. Sounds and tones, frequencies. So saying affirmations about yourself, over yourself, and saying good things about yourself, positive things about yourself, and even things that just align you with your own energy, that aren't even exactly like good things about yourself in a way, but they just help you align more with what you would want to be. Like, I am still. Stillness keeps coming up. So something like that. I am still, and add whatever you feel to that. I feel like it has to be spoken out loud though. I feel like thought though and felt can also work as well. But I feel like it should be a mixture. I don't feel like it, like I feel like it has to be spoken sometimes. At least sometimes it needs to be actually said out loud. And you need to start to change your thought patterns about yourself. And you're not going to want to do so many bad things for yourself if you are feeling better about yourself. And you're going to want to do things that are better for yourself when you feel better about yourself. I feel like there are a lot of gifts that you have, but some of them have more to do with your feminine side. They have to do with your ability to get still. That is what is going to push them forward and bring them out. And even your ability to tune into your guides, this is obviously coming from your more feminine side, because that has to do with going in, going within, and your psychic ability. But this is your feminine side, and it comes to you from being still. I feel like it's healing to be outside, to be around animals, to be in nature. To have crystals around you is good also, but especially I feel like animals. I feel like animals really suit your energy. Being outside, being in nature. Even like the wind, I feel like, can almost like release some of this, if that's your intention. And even being outside and meditating, and there's something with this and a past life too, where you were specifically outside. So not so much the monk life where you were more in a monastery, not that you were never outside meditating, but you were in more of like a monastery kind of setting, or you would have been Whoa. Such a loud frequency all of a sudden. Tunnel. Okay. All right. What was I saying? Right. So there is a light flashing over here, but that's not what I was gonna say. Right. The lifetime. There's some other lifetime that's in connection to this going outside thing. I have a lot of guides coming up all of a sudden. These kind of feel like my guides though. So I feel like it's kind of my guides and also some of your guides. I keep getting the feeling of runes. Because even when I was first talking about meditating, I was seeing like runes. And when you're outside, just like how you can hold a crystal, you can hold crystals in your hands and you can meditate with those energies there. Sometimes people use runes as well. I would say not nearly as many people who would use crystals, but I have definitely heard of that before. People using runes when they meditate and holding the runes. But there was an energy of that coming in, and there's something to do with runes and a past life. And this feels like quite a while back. Definitely feels like going back a ways. And I keep getting Vikings. Like, I don't necessarily think it was exactly the Vikings, but I feel like it was that same kind of time period. But I feel like there was some interaction with Vikings. But I don't feel like you yourself were one necessarily. This doesn't feel like druid. It feels like some other kind of religion, but some other kind of practices that are kind of similar though to Druidism. It is kind of similar, but I just don't feel like it's specifically Druidism. That's like the one that I know about from over there from a long time ago. Because who the heck doesn't know about that? Who doesn't know about Druidism? So that I feel like is the one that I have kind of heard of. And I feel like there's another one from back there. I feel like you were male and you were using runes and you were like casting like fortunes and things. And I feel like you were really, really in tune with animals, specifically animals. Even the runes themselves were almost like guides, or you could almost get like messages from the runes themselves. And I'm seeing like a rabbit. And it feels like a totem animal from back then, from way back then. Feels almost like this is like your power animal, but from like a really, like from that lifetime, in other words. This feels like it's like one of your power animals. And it looks brown. It's like this, or kind of gray even, like brownish gray rabbit. That I was definitely not expecting. But it feels like the way that it almost moves its ears and how alert it is. How it hears like every sound or every noise, and it can jump out of the way really quickly. It feels like that is something that you are kind of drawing from or drawing on. And even like psychically, how sensitive it is, how alert it is. And like it feels things. Like empathically, it can almost like feel when there's a presence there, or like if someone is watching it, it can feel what to do or when to move. So it's almost like a communication, where almost like the energy around it communicates to it very easily. It picks up on communications. So it's almost like the wind and how subtle the wind is. And that energy feels really, really subtle like that. You have to pick up on it. You have to think of it. It feels kind of like that, how subtle it is. And also the fact that the wind can just change really quickly without you necessarily noticing it. It can change course. It can stop blowing in the same way that it was before. It can blow lighter. It can blow heavier. And so just like the wind in that way, it feels like energy is that way. Energy is very subtle, and it can shift, it can change course, it can change the way that it communicates, like in a sudden way. And you have to pick up on it, and you have to be alert, and you have to feel what it is. And that's its way of communication. And I feel like that is what he is drawing on from the rabbit. And he feels that from the rabbit. How the rabbit is always alert. And even almost on edge in a sense. But in a very present way. He can sense danger, and he can get out of its way. Because of the rabbit, it feels like. But he's very psychically in tune because of the rabbit. And not because of the rabbit, obviously, but because he has those attributes, because he takes on those characteristics. and because he finds that within himself. But it feels like the rabbit does kind of guide him. So he looks at these as guides. These animals are guides. And when he sees them in the wild, they are like a sign. They're like an omen to him. Something bad is coming, something good is going to happen. And he can tell what they are. He can tell what the signs are, what the signs mean. And he's very meditative. He likes to be in the present moment. He doesn't like to be all over the place. He likes to be quiet and alert and still. But very, very aware of his physical surroundings, aware of his emotional, mental, and energy self. He wants to be aware of all aspects of himself. And I feel like he's mastered that to a degree. But I feel like he wants to master it more. So he's learning more and more. I don't feel like he's necessarily considered like adept at what he's doing. It's not that he isn't considered good, he's not considered a master in a sense. I don't feel like he is. I feel like it feels like he is younger, and it feels like he's with a group, but he tends to be off by himself a lot. And it's not like they really have like a building where they are. It doesn't feel like. It feels like they just sort of live with other like villagers or something like that. But they also meet together. But I don't know if I'm getting that 100% right, but it's similar. It's similar to that. Or they might have a place where they kind of stay, but it doesn't feel like it's like an official building or something. I also don't feel like there's a lot of them. I feel like there's maybe 5 or so of them. There's like a handful of them. And it feels like it's somebody who's like passing this on to the others. It feels like all of them are male. But it doesn't really feel like it's because there aren't females or that there couldn't be females. So I'm not exactly sure why that is. Or maybe they split them up, or I'm not really sure. You're really into this idea of awareness. And I feel like you're more gifted than the others in your group kind of realize, or than other people in general kind of realize. So I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and it feels like it just sort of needs to be brought up or stirred up. I feel like you can see it, but it feels like you kind of like to be in the background. I also feel like there are some responsibilities that you wouldn't really want to take on. So it kind of feels like you don't let others see it. You kind of want to be seen as kind of mysterious or elusive in a way, and go off by yourself. But you talk with the others, and you're friendly with the others. But it almost feels like there's a hidden quality that you're kind of going to keep hidden, it feels like. Maybe until it's the right time. I almost feel like that's going to come into fruition more in this lifetime. More in this lifetime. I don't feel like it's going to be that exactly. But I feel like that energy is going to manifest something that's going to be more apparent in this lifetime, where you kind of allow yourself to be more noticeable with whatever you're going to be doing later on. But in a positive way, in a beneficial way, where it's going to be a benefit to others. I feel like it is something to do with spirituality. I don't really feel like you're going to get away from that, if you can help it. I don't really feel like you're meant to get away from that. And I feel like that's going to be something that always calls out to you and always tries to kind of lure you back in, until finally you choose it, if you decide to. I feel like there's a certain time period that you have to really choose it. Otherwise, I feel like it almost feels like there are two paths. There's the one that you really contracted to do, and then there's another that you also contracted to do if you don't do this one. And I feel like you were really meant to do the first one. And so I hope that you do that one, it feels like. The second one, I feel like, is more in case you don't do this one. And you can still end up doing something positive, but I don't feel like you would have as much impact. I don't feel like you would become as free, or get through as many blocks. I feel like you would hold on to a lot more things, and I feel like there would be a lot more lessons that need to be learned. I don't feel like you could evolve as much, or even handle as much interaction from your guides. It's like if you're on a lower vibration, certain higher things aren't really able to happen to you or happen for you. And that's just a result of you don't match the frequencies. If you don't match the frequency of a higher understanding or a higher download or communication or whatever it is, or a higher thing happening, or even like a career, a higher career, then you're going to end up maybe still doing something impactful to a degree, but it's going to be less high. It's not going to be as high. It has to be lower. It has to be on a lower frequency, because that's what you match. So it's not like that's a punishment or something. That's just like, in case I'm not on as high of a frequency as I'm hoping to be on, as I'm hoping to get to, or stay on. In case I'm not, this is what I can do if I don't decide that. Thank you very much for this reading, The Monk. That is all that your guides have to say, and I truly hope that it has benefited you. Thank you so much. Namaste.